be doing, because Taro found a fly in his wine. And I feel like if he was that concerned, how much more so we should be when it comes to fruits and vegetables. And last but not least, we, at the end of the program, we will have thrift cloths for sale. They're $5 each. And we also have a card which has all the different, there's a card that comes and show them. You'll see them over there. And for the people who are on Zoom, there's a card which gives you all the details on how to check various fruits and vegetables and grains. I'll take some of those home, so if anybody would like in the next couple of weeks or so to purchase either the thrift box or to get one of these placards, they're free. I can give them to you. And also one more thing, if you have any questions and you're on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat box. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. For just my last I really want to leave that. It was a pleasure to spend time with him. To be here in Silver Spring. It's definitely not my second time in Silver Spring. Let's get something straight. Maybe for the program here, but Baltimore is definitely a sister city to Silver Spring. I think, as I said last time, plus initially said, a neighbor that's close is sometimes even closer than a brother. And the shot in that is that obviously a brotherly relationship is something that's always unique and very special. At the same time, having a neighbor who's close by, the influence is something that's uncomparable. And it's a constant influence and something that everybody benefits from. So I know Baltimore, Silver Spring, I think that's something that's a mutual feeling, definitely on the Kashrus level. I could say between the start and about Washington, it's something that has only gotten stronger over the years, even more recently, not even stronger. And it's something that I think both agencies benefit from greatly. And it's a tremendous relationship, and I'm supposed to be here, and I'm supposed to have those kinds of relationships. Just commenting on what Mrs. Friedman mentioned, first of all, thank you again for your persistence. I know we had to cancel this originally and postpone it a little bit, and thank you for pushing it through. Definitely before COVID, we used to give these presentations dozens of times per year, and now it's coming back a little bit, but somebody asked me, how do you decide, which communities to say yes to, which presentations to say yes to? So I almost jokingly said, depends how persistent they are. So that's sort of the reality. Baruch Hashem, things are very busy in the start day, as they are in the Bottom Washington and Kashrus world in general. Things are extremely busy, and definitely making time for these presentations. I wouldn't say it's a challenge because it's something that we feel very much as part of our mission and something that's our pleasure to do. The Start Day doesn't even charge for these presentations, and just saying that because we definitely behind it, and Dr. Pollack feel very much it's part of the mission of the Start Day to spread Kashrus education. It's part of our slogan, even Kashrus education. So. Again, your persistence definitely pays off, but again, not because we ignore people, just because we try to fit everybody in, but it's not always possible. So sometimes people are a little more persistent than the ones that get in. But anyways, thank you very much for doing that, and it was a pleasure to be here. Just commenting on what you said as far as the Flying Cars Cup. So that's an interesting analogy. In a certain sense, none of us are going to necessarily end up in jail for life, for having a fly end up in our cup. But it's not necessarily such a good thing either. And it's something that maybe we should discuss. Actually, I have a slide not about that point per se, but not to think about it, adding this point over here. Mrs. Friedman, as far as was listed and almost ended up life in prison for eating a fly. Okay, something to think about.
Okay.
It's not working.
Hold on, I got it.
Okay, so the first slide actually was fused right into that is when it talks about the actual harm that comes from eating the bug. So we know this year so far we've been scared, maybe because no one's looking. There's been many recalls in the vegetable industry as far as E. coli, Listeria, different types of bacteria, and there's been tremendous recalls, tremendous scares that people had. A lot of people don't want to buy romaine lettuce anymore. Romaine lettuce sales still have not recovered. From the last Listeria recall, which was 2020. I only think and before that, it was pretty much almost every year, especially in the winter. At some point in time, there was a recall on romaine lettuce because of Listeria. I think 2021 there wasn't. That's probably because the inspectors were all out with COVID. No, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but that's probably the reality. It was too consistent, and all of a sudden it suddenly stopped. But the interesting thing is that my day job, so to speak, that I was talking to Rosenbaum about is I run the food service department for the Star Page, Mrs. Price knows. Right, I run all the restaurants and caterers and things like that. So it's a very low pressure industry. You know, everybody leaves you alone, and it's very calm, cool, collected, and very peaceful. Right. So I walk into my office, I take a coffee, and nothing. My phone barely rings the whole day. Anyways, so in that industry is very interesting. An interesting phenomenon happens, and that is that caterers again are low pressure people. Never any issues with that. And the people who are making simple, because also, no one has any demands or particulars about how they want their menu planned. And people obviously are particular, people are serious about they want this salad or this vegetable, an arugula salad, or spring mix salad, a masculine salad, or romaine lettuce salad, or kuru. And all of a sudden we went from I must have salad to don't you dare serve me salad. Right? Just literally like that. And let's back up for a second. What exactly happens when they have a lettuce recall? What happens is that somebody gets sick somewhere. And now, mind you, E. coli and Listeria similarly take about 5 to 7 days to incubate before they even come out of your system. So, first of all, I don't know about any of you, I don't remember what I ate yesterday. Forget about what I ate a week ago. Right? Okay, for Shabbos, so we can try to figure out, like last Shabbos, I was at the Kiddush at somebody's house and they had this amazing salad. That might stick out in my mind, but in the general sense, especially from the non-Jewish world, where yesterday was McDonald's and the day before was Burger King, and before that, maybe I picked up a salad. Like, I don't remember what I ate yesterday or the day before for lunch. Forget about it during the week. Not even a chance. So you mean I have to try to remember all of a sudden I got sick. It was from a salad that I ate a week ago. And now I'm going to research it and decide that that's from an E. coli recall. E. coli that was in that salad. Seriously speaking, the statistics of that being reality, or more importantly, even during those recalls, is the actual possibility of anybody getting sick. It was more likely to get hit by lightning and bitten by a shark at the same time, right? In Denver, which is landlocked, okay? It's virtually impossible for anyone to really get sick during any of the recalls, statistically speaking. Yet, they forced recalls, the companies pulled recalls, they made headline news, people stopped buying lettuce over what kind of chance? Over a chance that was so far-fetched, it was hard to even have people do it seriously. But E. coli. Everyone's taking it seriously. I'm not taking any chances. I'm not touching that bag of lettuce. There's even a remote possibility of me getting sick. I'm not going to touch it. Now people have that mindset. So that's in a physical sense. When it comes to a spiritual sense, where the threat is so much more real and so much more present, how much more careful do we really have to be? The question is that something that we necessarily take so seriously? So yes, some people do, because Kashrus is something we all take seriously. But that's just somewhat of a gauge to try to figure out, like, how visible is this threat? And the answer is quite visible, definitely more prevalent than the amount of the seriousness that we took. We all stopped eating salad because of E. coli. The threat of bugs in our salad, which can cause physical harm, and you look at all the functional formation Kashrus, they all talk about how horrible eating a single bug is, between 4 lavin to 6 lavin. And mind you, and that is following the point that someone once pointed out to me, that the Torah uses the word kedusha more times in relationship to Kashrus than anything else. We use in devotion as kaddish, we look at Kashrus, we look at Kashrus, constantly again, all in relation to food. It's all in relation to food. Again and again and again, I think it's like 13 times or something like that. It's an incredible amount of time the Torah uses the word kedusha, directly relationship to Kashrus. And the reason is because of the following things. We know America wants Dunkin' Donuts, definitely in this area, right? Kosher Dunkin' Donuts all the way. Starcase certified, bottom Washington certified, Baltimore, you can get called. Strong with the Dunkin' Donuts, right? Runs on Dunkin' Donuts, no question about it. But Klal Yisrael runs on something very different. This is a slide about Rolls Royce. We remember from last time. I think they used it last time. I don't remember exactly. Rolls Royce is a very interesting spec about it. When I circled it, you can't see it, but I highlighted it over here. Is that the fuel needed to run a Rolls Royce is you need at least a 90 octane gas. If you can't, you can get away with 91 octane gas. Now, you don't know what that is. Next time you go to 12 gas, if you don't have a Tesla, then pay attention to the pump. And there's different levels of gas. There's the lowest level, which is like 87. If you're lucky, you can find 85, 87, 89, 91, 93. 93 is the most expensive type of gas. 91 is right behind it. Because a better engine, Rolls-Royce cars are known for their engines. Better engine means better gas. So Klal Yisrael also, as Hashem's chosen people, as Am Nidbar of Hashem, also need better gas. The fuel engine feels the serve properly. You can't eat, you can't live. And that's why having kosher food in our systems is something that's so integral. At everything we do, anything after that morning coffee starts us off during the day, Without that morning coffee, we're stopped dead in the water, right? After that morning coffee, whatever kosher food we're going to eat during the day that fuels our ability to serve Hashem properly throughout the day, that food is what gives us the energy and is integral to giving us the ability to serve Hashem properly. And that's why kosher food is something that is the core and the essence of who the Jewish people are. And that's why it's so important. And it's not, the reason Kashrus is not trying to tout the horns of the Kashrus agencies that were such an integral part of YISE, but that's the reality. That's why having Kashrus agencies is so important. It's not just a group of rabbis sitting around trying to make rules and trying to make regulations over restaurants. This is something that literally defines who we are. And with Hanukkah coming up, it's one of the things the abundant wanted to take away from us. They didn't take away time luxury for your right shoe. They didn't take away tefillin. They didn't even take away over 600 mitzvahs they had no problem leaving in place. It shows the mitzvahs that struck at the core of the identity of Klal Yisrael. And Kashrus is one of those. Right? So having this, I see this gathering here, a little bit in the footsteps of Hanukkah, is something that's definitely appropriate and something that will serve to mechazek us to increase our awareness of Kashrus and do that our awareness of Kashrus, and something that literally is definitely an appropriate way to go into the lens of Hanukkah. Now, okay. Now, what I would like to do tonight, since I think everybody maybe is familiar from last time a little bit, at least remembers a little bit maybe. I don't necessarily want to spend so much time going through every single thing we went through last time. I kind of want to jump to, I'm going to go quickly through some of the points that we discussed and we'll lead up to the instructions, but I really want to get to the actual checking instructions to review those, and also some of the new things that have developed over the last couple of months, or at least since the last time we were here, which was before COVID, which was like, a century ago or something like that. So I'm going to skip through a lot of the slides here, and hopefully, if you have any questions along the way, just stop me and let me know. We'll definitely make sure we cover all the main points. So this is something just to remind everybody that is that this is nothing more under the sun. What we're talking about here is not anything that is new, it's not newfangled, and even though everyone's more talking about it now, the reason everyone's talking about it now is, first of all, it's something called media, right? And social media, which means that anything anybody else is talking about, I'm also talking about. So in the information spreads much faster. So the fact that when any of us were growing up as kids, we didn't have so much talk about this. We didn't talk about anything for that matter. The better for it, it was a good thing, it was a bad thing. Reality is that now everybody talks about anything that comes up in the Jewish world is instantly headline news, and everybody knows everything that's going on everywhere. If you think about it in the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, where it talks about why we have two busy yontif, because it took time for the messengers to get from the Sanhedrin in Ner Israel to the Chutz La'aretz, right? You wonder, like, what in the world, right? Nowadays, you tweet it out. The Sanhedrin's going to have their tweet done in 3 seconds. Everybody knows what's going on, right? It was a different reality back then, and leading up to today, where information is literally instantaneous. It's no wonder that anything becomes a hype. At the same time, fake news also becomes a hype, right? So that's something also we want to go through tonight, also to try to separate a little bit out what's real news, what's fake news, and understand exactly what the reality is and what we're supposed to be doing, and also what we're not supposed to be doing on both sides of the spectrum. Now, but the reality is that over the last 20, 30 years, this industry has definitely exploded and evolved. And for that matter, growing up as a kid, I'm not that old, and growing up as a kid, we really had green lettuces, as part of our daily menu. Not necessarily because of love, just because Israelis down a little bit, fine, iceberg lettuce once in a while. But when lettuce was like a Pesach food, and just because of the way it was. Now, if you think back where Ashkenazi Jew in general came from Russia and all those areas in Europe, where the general menu consisted of whatever you made with potatoes and onions. So you have kitcha, you have grievance, you have chalmon, you have potato kugel, right? All these are healthy foods. That is the core of the Jewish diet, right? And that's really where we came from. That's, America itself also was part of immigrants, right? Way back. But these things didn't necessarily catch up until the last 20, 30 years, where all of a sudden there's the green movement. People want to be more healthy, the organic movement. People don't like chemicals anymore. All those factors together create the situation where everyone wants to eat more vegetables. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Nobody likes chemicals anymore. Also not necessarily a bad thing. But now you have a tremendous amount of vegetables. and a decrease of ability to use any kind of chemical pesticides or anything else that's artificial or even natural. No one wants anything other than the vegetable the way God made it and put it in the ground. So yeah, we have a new problem that did not exist 20, 30 years ago. Now, I'm not making this up. You can go to the fields. I was just in Arizona. I was in Arizona last week where the lettuce is currently growing in the winter, together with all the rest of the snowbirds. And the farmers there will tell you the same thing. Not so much in Arizona because they have a pretty easy time. When you go to California, farmer told me he's a fourth or fifth generation farmer. He said he's never had the insect issues that he has today. He said his grandparents, his parents, he grew up as a little kid, he never had such problems before. They always do whatever they need to do, pesticide-wise or whatever it is, and you make sure they didn't have any problems. Right nowadays, you can't use this pesticide, you can't use that pesticide, and everybody wants organic. Right, all the Whole Foods and Trader Joe's of the world, and everybody wants organic, everybody wants green. It became a new problem. It's a new problem that literally did not exist many years ago, and that's why it's so much talk about it. It's at the forefront of every capital agency, as much for better or for worse, whether they like it, whether they don't like it, whether it's annoying, whether it's not annoying. This is something that everybody has become very busy with because the reality is people want salads. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. People don't want chemicals. Also not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. But no one wants to eat bugs. That's a bad thing. That's not a good thing. Right? So we got to try to make this work. So with that becomes an mentioned for a lot of misinformation, right? There's some people that end up being too strict for no reason, and some people end up being too lenient also for no reason. Now, when this presentation raises your awareness or calms your fears, whichever side of the spectrum you're on, hopefully everybody will gain something from it and take it, home with you and be able to enjoy your salads, comfortably and making sure they're 100% kosher at the same time, which is very doable. Then nothing I'm going to say make anybody think that you can't do this because you could do this. Most people do this. If you really have poor eyesight, I don't mean poor eyesight, meaning my glasses are a pretty strong prescription. I don't have perfect vision by any stretch of any doctor's imagination, even imagination. But it's something that really innovates effectively. You just have to know how to do it. It's just, I don't even want to say it's a skill. It's something most people have learned. It's not rocket science even. It's something that's pretty simple. It's just something you have to take seriously, spend a little bit of time learning how to do. And after that, you really should be good to go. Now, there's some vegetables that are going to be a little more challenging, might be a good idea to stay away from. But if your goal to walk out tonight is to find out how I can make my wheat soup for Rosh Hashanah, have my romaine lettuce, spinach salads, for lunch, and serve them on Shabbos, I think you'll be all right. Hopefully by the end of the night. Now, you're not going to walk out of here an expert, but you'll have enough information to start practicing and at least understand what you have to do. The cards are here that have all the detailed instructions. We have the StartKate website, checkforinsects.com, which goes directly to the StartKate website. You can go to startkate.org also, but checkforinsects.com takes you directly to our bug checking page. It has all the items we're going to be discussing tonight, the exact instructions how to do it, video tutorials, and even has this whole presentation in a much longer format. We could actually skip different parts, something I say, you could skip over it even, and you could actually watch and review and remind yourself of anything you need to remind you. Okay, so our goal today again is to review procedures, look at the facts, raising awareness, calming your fears, whichever one it is. We're not going to make you an expert, and the most important thing is I'm not here to sell you any products. I'm not here to tell you to buy any one particular company over another particular company. I don't work for a lettuce company. I work for a Kashrus agency, which means that if you decide to buy a StartKate product versus an OD product, if you decide to buy an OD product versus a StartKate product, a COC product, an OK product, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. It doesn't change my life in any way, shape, or form, whichever company you decide to buy. As long as they're all kosher, which, if you move where they would be, if they have a reliable agency on there, and of course, if you have a lot of Washington symbol on there, definitely it makes your life easier. So that my goal here is nothing to do with any financial thing. We're just simply here talking about Kashrus. Okay, so the one thing to understand is that in halacha, and the only slide that has to do with halacha, and the rest of it is all going to be general, it's going to be directly above knowledge. Is that there's 3 levels in halacha. Number 1 is rogue, which means something that most of the time is going to be infested. Such an item, which is not necessarily so common, is asr midaraisa, biblically prohibited to eat until you check it. Now, such an item would be included in that would be, let's say, organic greens, which are very, very highly infested. Best idea is to avoid them. I'm not saying you can't check them. You can use the exact same procedures we're talking about on organic, but you might have a harder time. If you find bugs, don't be surprised. In fact, if you want to practice the recommendation, I always tell people to buy organic produce and try these procedures, and you're almost guaranteed you're going to find bugs on there because they're very highly infested. Again, you can check them if you want. If your doctor said you have to eat organic produce, does the doctor know about organic, as much as I know about medicine. Nothing against any doctors here, but I once got into some of an argument with the doctor, not in this city, in a different city, when I made a comment about people trying their best to avoid organic produce, like, but it's healthier. I told my patients, I get calls from people who are never, unfortunately going through chemotherapy. The doctor told me I have to avoid chemicals and eat organic produce. So let me give a disclaimer out here first, by the way. Okay. So those of you who don't know, Star K has a partnership with QAI. QAI is the largest organic hatchery. For something to be considered organic, it has to actually have a hatchery on it. It's a federal law. So QAI, Quality Assurance International, is part of the division of the NSF. It's a very, very large organic hatchery. Star K has a partnership with them where we train our mashgichim to also be organic inspectors. And the idea is that we'll go to a company and we'll sit down with the company, do a kosher audit and organic audit at the same time. It streamlines the process. The companies love it. It saves them time, it saves them money. And it's a great program. Hashem gets us companies, right? Full disclosure. But the idea is that it's a very good service that we can offer the companies. Now, personally, I'm trained as an organic inspector. For many years, I did organic inspections. Baruch Hashem, no more. They're very tedious. They're very different than Kashrus inspections, but that's not for now. But the idea is that I can tell you firsthand that I have a really good window of what's going on in the organic world. And if you're going to take at face value, the belief that organic is 100% chemical free, then I can say it's Susquehanna Bridge. In New York, I say it's like Brooklyn Bridge, but I'll say it's like Susquehanna Bridge. It's not the reality. And if you read the NLP guidelines, it doesn't claim to be the reality. There's plenty of chemicals and artificial things that they do allow in certain circumstances. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. They're really not misleading anybody. Just for some reason, everyone has this perception, like kosher being healthy, right? It's like kosher being blessed by the rabbi. It's totally not the reality. We've never claimed it to be the reality. Some of the world developed this thing in their head that this is the reality, so all of a sudden that's the reality. Again, it's the same thing. It may have less chemicals, sure, right? But comparatively speaking, if the doctor is telling someone they're on chemotherapy that, or if they don't eat only organic produce, you're eating too many chemicals, versus the issue that they have with the bugs, it's kind of a hashara that nobody really knows how to make. So like you gotta take it apart in the phone with a grain of salt. Because it's something that you really have to weigh very, very carefully versus the issues that could be with organic produce. Now, there's many other ways to get your nutrition, your vitamins, right? If someone needs certain types of vitamins, you get pills and things like that, but that's not for now. I'm just throwing out the point is that organic produce is generally more infested. It fits into this category we're talking about it being most of the time infested, and it's something that generally speaking is probably easiest to avoid, unless you're willing to put the time and effort to get it clean, which you can do. Okay, that's number one. Number two is miramatzi, which is under that, which means most of the time it's not going to be infested, which is pretty much all of our regular conventional greens. It's a chiyuv midrabanan to check. A rabbinical obligation to check these things. Now that's something we take seriously. It's not just because it's not biblical, we don't take it seriously. We take it quite seriously. We all celebrate time to get off of school, have vacation days, and all of the rabbis. Right? Don't forget that. Right? Purim also because of the rabbis, right? So you take them seriously in that and take them seriously there too. And then the lowest level is Miyach and Amas. And I always say this one's the most important thing, which means generally speaking, we say under 10%. And I say that that's the most important level because it doesn't mean zero. I get a call from people all the time. I found the bug in my green pepper, I found the bug in my red pepper, sweet potato, regular potato, sun-dried tomatoes, all kinds of things. You can find bugs in anything. I hate to say it, but you go to a single area, you see a bunch of ants crawling around, lots of them. Right? Someone left some food over here, and all of a sudden there's an ant infestation going on over here. It's not so hard to get rid of it. I'm not saying that to publicize that there's an issue in Israel over here, there's an ant infestation. But the reality is that bugs like food, right? They're going to go after food. The question is, at the point that I'm ready to eat it, which means I take my whatever vegetable I'm doing, my green peppers, my red peppers, I rinse them, and I'm ready to make my salad. At that point, what are the chances of me finding a bug here? Not very high, definitely not more than 10%. In which case, don't bother worrying about it. You want to check it, leave it alone. Now, here's a partial list of things like that are Miyach and Amas you don't need to check. And it doesn't mean you're never going to find a bug in it, you still don't need to check. Beans, cherries, even pick your own cherries. And we get this call, especially during cherry season all the time. Frozen cherries we want to know about. As far as we know, in America at least, I can only speak for America, North America anyways, we're not finding any serious bug problems in cherries, frozen or fresh. Corn cans are on the cob, qualified a little bit later, but more or less corn is kind of a little bit overblown. There's a lot of hype about corn, but we're not so excited about it. Flour, leaves in the United States, mango, nuts, onions, not scallions, all colored peppers, and snap peas. Sorry, I missed that one. We'll talk about snap peas later. Spices, string beans, tomatoes. All these things are items that you don't need to check. You don't need to do any special prep necessary, more than what you do in general before you make a salad, which pretty much includes washing it. Now, always wash your vegetables. Okay, let me tell you why, and just sort of understand on your own. Think of it this way: if you don't wash your vegetables, or if you do, just think about understanding. This is a fact. The last person who touched those vegetables were the people who picked it in the field. Did I say anymore? Okay. Just think about it that way. Always wash anything, that natural item that ruined the ground. Always wash it before you eat it. Just as a okay, just a good piece of advice. Always wash it. And we're talking about at that point, after you wash it and you're ready to eat it, then at that point, these items do not have any insect issues going in. They're checking any special kind of prep, wash, or anything else other than just a simple rinse, which again you're doing anyway. Now, how do you know the percentages? You don't. You don't. It's not something that's practical for any individual to do. It's not practical for anyone outside a Kashrus agency or Kashrus agencies to do. And the reason for that is because there are so many variables that affect infestation. You go to lettuce fields, especially in, let's say, Northern California, where the lettuce grows most of the year. They have what's known there as microclimates, which means when you drive from San Francisco International Airport down to Salinas, California, King City, which is about a little less than 2 hour drive. The temperature can change. I have seen this with my own eyes. I've experienced it myself with my own car because my car is gauged, but it's pretty accurate, especially sticking out the window because I thought I was dreaming. It changes 40 to 50 degrees. Literally, it can change 40 to 50 degrees, and there's lettuce fields all the way down, which means you can have a lettuce field closer to San Francisco, which is at a nice, cool 60, 70 degrees, but it's close to the coast. And San Francisco, by the way, has this aura of everybody's being attracted to go to San Fran and have a good time over there. It's a very dreary city. I'm not talking about wilderness ones. Forget that for a second. The weather there is horrible. It's cloudy, it's rainy, it's cold, it's windy. I don't get it. Maybe once or twice I've been there. I go there a lot. Once or twice I've been there. It's actually nice weather. It's a dreary city. Anyways, but lettuce that grows under those conditions is pretty good because bugs don't like that either. We don't like it, bugs don't like it either. So lettuce growing there is pretty good. You go a little further south, all of a sudden it's 95 degrees with a coastal breeze rolling in some moisture because near the coast, and you have aphids coming out of the woodwork. It is infested beyond belief. And you get a little further down, and all of a sudden it's back to 75 and cool. Then all of a sudden it starts raining. And it's like, you almost think you're in Baltimore, right? There's all these weather changes. But the reality is that that's how these lettuce regions grow. And therefore it's very, very hard to make any kind of determination. Okay, how infested is one with lettuce? It's impossible. There's so many variables, and that's just the weather. There's so many other variables that go into it as well. How good the farmers are, or how bad the farmers are, how careful they monitor it, how careful they don't monitor it. Is near highways, roadways, things like that. So many variables that are almost impossible to take into account. The general determinations that we had is really, we did a lot of the research, we certified a lot of the vegetable companies, and therefore we have just raw numbers of mashgichim going in every single day and reporting the statistics. So you kind of get a picture over years and years and years of what's going on here with infestation levels of vegetables. But more than that, also it's with joint amongst agencies. A lot of we all work together and share information. And we all pretty much come up with the same idea. And that's how we get this determination that lettuce is in one category and organic is in a different category, etc. And anything that changes, by the way, and we're going to talk about some changes, we're going to focus on some of the changes, like I said, about snap peas, we'll talk about that. That didn't happen overnight either. That happened over a long period of time where we started seeing an issue and we sort of started checking into the various variables that go into it just to see, are we seeing a real change? Is it a fluke? Is it not a fluke? A lot of information, a lot of work, a lot of library goes into trying to figure out what is real and what's not real. Okay. Now, greenhouse effect. So I don't know how relevant this is in the stores here. I just want to mention it because everyone has this thing in the kosher world that greenhouses are magical. Anything that goes in the greenhouse can't be infested. It's coming up now a lot with the aquaponics, and people have these vertical farms and things like that, which are also greenhouse grown. Are they better? Yeah. Are they significantly better? They could be, but they're by no means perfect. And especially when you have this thing came out from Ner Israel, what you have in Ner Israel, you can't buy anything that's not greenhouse grown. You almost can't even find it. I was in Yerushalayim not so long ago. You go to the stores, you can't find anything that's not greenhouse grown. Why? Because it has to be greenhouse grown in order to be kosher. That's the perception that's come out, and in America, a lot of the kosher vegetables all happen to be greenhouse grown, and that's kind of a selling point. I'm not saying it doesn't help for Kashrus, but it's kind of more of a selling point. And the reason for that is the following concept. Think about it this way. What's the idea of a greenhouse? The idea of a greenhouse is you want to keep the bugs out. Very nice. But let's say a bug gets in. How do you get rid of them? Not so easy. And keep in mind also that an aphid, which is a common bug that gets into the greenhouse, is very little. Aphid does not, it can lay up to 60 eggs a day. A day. Okay? So you get one aphid in there, you got a big problem. Try squaring that over just 2-3 days, you got a major problem on your hands. Right? So greenhouses are not necessarily the God's gift to mankind. They're helpful if they're managed right, but if I had a choice, if someone gave me $1 million to start a vegetable company, and nowadays it has to be $2 million. You say $1 million. Nowadays $1 million would get you too far, inflation. But if someone gave me money to start a vegetable company, I would not start a greenhouse company. I would start a regular open field where you can apply pesticides, you can find areas in the field which are cleaner, you can search around and you'll get what you need out of it, want, etc. As opposed to a greenhouse, when you start with a lower quality product, you end up having to spray a lot of pesticides because you're trying to keep it clean, and if you don't keep it clean, you end up with a low quality product that nobody wants, and in fact, that's what you do with it. Shut the whole greenhouse. That's what ends up happening, which is a tremendous loss. It's a very risky endeavor. Now, with some items, there's really no practical way to do it effectively for kosher consistently without a greenhouse. For example, broccoli, frozen broccoli, all the frozen broccoli companies that are kosher or greenhouse grown. Just because it's just practical, broccoli is just too hard of an item to get clean consistently if you don't have a greenhouse. That's why they use greenhouses. And they use greenhouses in Ecuador, where it's 11,500 feet above sea level. I've been there, puffing and puffing. You know, I'm not in the worst shape out there, but walking or even trying to move effectively at 11,500 feet of elevation when you're not used to it is a feat. And there's very little oxygen up there, so it's hard for humans to breathe. It's also hard for bugs to breathe. They need oxygen too. Therefore, it's a very, very good place to grow vegetables. And that's why, let's say, pecan, for example, a frozen vegetable company. Pecan grows in Ecuador for that reason. They have all the different advantages there of high elevation in greenhouses, and that's why they produce such consistent product. Okay, now let's jump right into keeping up to date. Things do change as we discuss some of the changes. Our website, checkforinsights.com, is the most up-to-date way to stay on top of things. You could sign up for alerts. I would recommend it. If there's something really significant that comes out, as opposed to just a small group on the calendar, then we do have an email alert. The things we're going to discuss here a little more in depth, like brown rice, quinoa, snap peas, snow peas. These are more recent. We did send out alerts about, and if you're on our alerts list, you'll get information about that. So that's something that's worthwhile. Now, if you are going to be checking on your own on a regular basis, and you do all of a sudden decide you're finding bugs in tomatoes, okay, you decide you're finding bugs in tomatoes, then you can let us know about it. We're interested in hearing from you. We're not here to say that we've got this under control. Nothing will ever change. Things do change. There's no question that things do change. So let us know about it. But you got to let us know a little more than you call and say, I found a bug in my tomato. Okay. Thank you very much. What kind of bug was it? Where did you find it? Where did you buy the produce? And pictures really help. Where's the country of origin, which it all says on there, by the way. So that information is really helpful. And the reason for that is, for example, if you find a beetle or a spider or a cockroach in your tomato, I'm going to say, maybe shop at another store. If you're finding aphids or thrips, then they're really going to pique my interest. So that's why it's important to have pictures, so at least know a little bit of what you do, which hopefully by the 1990 you will know. Now, one important point I'm going to bring up here before we actually start checking is that, as I mentioned, country of origin. Something that we did issue alert about, which is not bug related, it has to do with Eretz Yisrael related, is that there is actually a lot of produce coming out of Eretz Yisrael now that is still relevant to Shemitah. There's actually a bigger problem with Shemitah produce after Shemitah than there is during Shemitah. And the reason is the following thing. Let's talk about vegetables for a second. Vegetables in general, for them, or the Shemitah for them, goes by when they're planted, when they're harvested, when they're harvested. As opposed to fruits, which go after when they started growing. So let's say last year, right, fruits take a long time to grow, many months to grow. They didn't even start having Shemitah fruits in Ner Israel even until this past summer, which is supposed to be in the Shemitah already. That's why all the citrus fruits that we had over the last year, the jack and orange we had last year, regular Trumas and Rice, no problem with Shemitah. Now it's a real problem with Shemitah. Vegetables was the opposite. Vegetables have a much shorter growth cycle than fruits. So vegetables at the beginning of Shemitah were a problem. Obviously, in the middle of Shemitah, for sure. Even now, let's say right now, there's a lot of peppers and carrots that are on the market. Peppers and carrots have a decent amount of shelf life. So I was actually talking to Rabbi Sholom Tendler, who's the head of YISE Israel. He's at a conference a few nights ago, and we were discussing this. And he said, "You're almost guaranteed that they were planted and harvested during Shemitah at this point." He says it's now middle of the season. He says carrots for sure, and we guarantee that they're from Shemitah. In which case, that means they were planted in Shemitah. This is a major problem. It's not just you can eat them with your kids. You're not allowed to eat them. And more than that is that with all this produce that they have in Israel right now, all the produce from Shemitah, obviously they're bringing from outside of Israel, but anything that they export are only the things that they can't sell, and they won't let them sell in the country because they were planted in a prohibited way. So for any Israeli produce we find right now in America, which is actually quite a bit, we're finding a lot of peppers now, a lot of carrots right now, and a lot of citrus fruits right now. In Costco, I play specifically Costco, Stop and Shop, Giant. I don't know about Trader Joe's a little bit also. Those stores will carefully for the country of origin. You find product in Israel, just avoid it. Don't buy it. It's not worth it. You're enter into all kinds of problems and shilas and things like that. It's just not worth it. On a regular year, we used to tell companies try to avoid Israeli produce, because it's some YISE and things like that. But then once PBS started, we were like, this kind of sounds a little strange that a Jewish organization is telling companies to avoid Israeli produce. You try telling them that's more sainted, you look at people, right? So like it didn't fly too well. We decided, buy Israeli produce, send them Mashkiach, they'll take some YISE, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Buy Israel, right? Go all the way. Right? During Shemitah, not worth it. It's really not worth it. And it's something that we tell our companies like, the span of the year, and they also look at right? You know what we're talking about. So listen, just trust me, okay? You get private business, just give me a call, okay? Just give me a call, okay? And we'll be like, okay, whatever you say, Rabbi. Thank you. That's all I need to do. Anyway, so that's something to be aware of. That's really produce right now. There's a lot of it on the market now, and it's problematic. So that's just as an aside. I want to talk about produce anyway. Okay. Let's talk quickly about dried goods, and we'll talk about quinoa and brown rice and things like that. Okay. So dried goods in general are not something that are infested. They're usually processed, could be subject to heat. They generally don't have any kinds of problems coming from the original sources. Flour, for example, is ground, right? Is milled. So it's not something that really is going to have any kind of infestation from the field. However, all dried goods, and we're not making this up, university period research, you can take a look, Google it yourself online, the term pantry pests, which is basically that any dried good naturally is going to have microscopic eggs in it. And that means is that don't wait, because I'm not going to find them. Anyways, it might gross you out. I might tell you, I'm sorry. If people don't have to think about what you eat, you'll have no problems with it. Anyway, okay, I'm not going to relate that. Anyway, so all microscopic eggs in them, which left to incubate, they will hatch. That's why if you look at any dried goods, whether it's macaroni, whether it's flour, dried food, actually says in the package, there's nothing to do with Kashrus, it says in the package from the company itself, dried spices, do not leave in direct heat, direct sunlight, warm, humid conditions. Why? Because the eggs will hatch and you will have a problem on your hands. People come back from the summer, having been away for a month, 2 months in the summer, it's guaranteed like clockwork. The first week in Elul, when schools reopen and everyone comes home from the summer, they go to their pantries and they call up saying, I have an infestation in my pantry. That's right. You left your air conditioner off in the summer, you're away for 2 months, you come back, your house is 98 degrees, and the Baltimore special, and here you have it also, the 3 H's, hot, hazy, and humid. Insects, eggs, love that, incubates them, they hatch, they build mishpachas, they have dirty grandchildren, great-grandchildren, bris and kiddushim, shomazafars, pidyon events, it's all going on in your pantry, right? And then you have a major problem in your hands, because you got to basically throw out everything in your pantry. I had a number of people this year that had that, and they said, they opened up their macaroni, they opened up their cereal, they're finding bugs everywhere. So you got to just take everything in the pantry, throw it out, wipe out your pantry with a bleach-based cleanser, right? So kill anything that's there. It's the only, and then start again. you really don't have much of a choice. This is something that happens naturally. So it's something that really can happen anywhere from the factory to your pantry. And there's really very little you can control it, except if you know how to control it. And that is, number one, recommend buy from normal stores. I'm not saying there's not normal stores here, but for example, closeout stores, 99-cent stores, right? Someone once followed us up with a question about a bag of pretzels that they found in a 99-cent store that had a extra on it. It was a funny extra. We looked into it. It turned out the company had gone out of business 8 years ago. Okay. There happened not to have an expiration date on the package. Gee, wonder why, right? And I would imagine they probably didn't even make it the last day they were in business, right? That's a good assumption. But we're at closeout stores, they buy things on cheap, things that have been sitting around, and therefore, the recommendation is 99 cents would be good for tchotchkes and Hanukkah presents, not food. Don't buy food in 99 cent stores. If you're buying closeouts, you're buying things that generally speaking are going to be very old, and that's the first place you're going to find places that are problems. Otherwise, generally speaking, normal supermarkets that have decent quality control, they rotate their stock. They don't have old things sitting around. Most supermarkets, at least around here. I'm talking in Europe, we have these tiny little mom and pop shops where they're trying to put product in different corners and you end up with things sitting around for a long time. But in most normal supermarkets, they are very careful about it, assuming the problem didn't happen at the distributor, which there could be, it could be, but generally speaking, you don't have to worry about any of these items. Okay, that's the point. You don't have to worry about these items. I would recommend paying a little bit of attention. Like for example, raisins. Raisins is a big factor in the Kashrus world. You put raisins, you can't raisins, you put check raisins, you can't check raisins, the half of, not above, like everybody's all over the place. Right? We did a lot of work on raisins, a lot of research on raisins, and we're figuring out is that if you buy a normal brand of raisins, I'll explain to you what that means. Generally speaking, you're not going to find bugs. If you buy Kirkland brand in Costco, if you buy Walmart brand in Walmart, if you buy ShopRite brand in ShopRite, if you buy Sun-Made brand or Gold brand, almost anywhere, you're going to be okay. The problem is we start getting the off brands in off-brand stores that pass through 5 distributors until they got there. That's when we're seeing an issue. So, generally speaking, we tell people, and it says on our website, we suggest recommend buying name brand raisins. Name brand or could be the store brand in that store. You want to ShopRite, to buy ShopRite in ShopRite, that's okay. But it didn't pass through 100 hands till it got there. It went to ShopRite, went to ShopRite store. Right? Kirkland, Costco actually is well known, renowned for their quality control, by the way, just as an aside. You can go one here, even Walmart. Walmart also, they pack it, they put it in their stores. They don't pass it through 100 different hands. Now, I'm not telling you which brands not to buy, but you'll figure it out. I don't want to say anything publicly about any particular brand, but that's the idea. The idea is you buy from companies and from stores that have normal, regular quality for practice, you're going to be okay. Okay. And then we come to things like, talk about, if you're stocking up for Yashan, or people who want to stock up for Yashan. So we'll talk about the recommendation, I'll get into the issue. That is, if you want to stock up for a long time, let's say you found a sale on flour, or you're out on Yashan, and even though I can just tell you around here, there's no real reason to stock up because you can find it plentifully available, both from Shalom Kosher over here instead of our market haven. If you want to come, there's plenty of Yashan available almost anything. You don't have to stock up. But if you do want to stock up, you live out of town, somewhere else, far out of town, you want to stock up for Yashan, what you do is the following thing. You buy flour, put it in the freezer for 4 days, 96 hours. This is again peer-reviewed research from universities. 96 hours at below freezing temperatures will kill any insect eggs that are there, and after that they will never hatch. And you won't have a problem anymore. As long as you keep it sealed in the Ziploc container, you're good to go, really for as long as you want. That's something you can do. Okay. Now, recently there's been some issues and discussion about brown rice and quinoa. Okay, and we're actually going to check some brown rice and quinoa right now. Where did that come from? It came from let's talk about brown rice for a second. I'm not sure which one's more popular. Brown rice. I'll do out on the color because I like quinoa, I don't like brown rice. Okay, so we'll do brown rice first. Brown rice is a very unprocessed grain. The whole grain is unprocessed. This means they leave a lot of the chaff. In the industry, they would say dirt on it. Yes, there's dirt on brown rice. Okay, that's just the reality. You want to eat something natural and processed, you're going to put dirt along with it. Now, so what happens along with that is that it has the eggs, has the bugs, and when this started coming up, this was, it's hard to. My point of reference is all screwed because of COVID. I don't remember how long ago it was anymore. However long ago it was, it was not that long ago, 2 years ago, 3 years, something like that. So we certify some of the largest rice companies in the world. are going to start with Ner rice and things that are very, very large companies. We called up and said, we're finding bugs in brown rice. Is that possible? They're like, sure. Like, excuse me? They're like, yeah, like, what have you been calling us for? Like, of course there's bugs in brown rice. Like, well, why didn't you tell us that? You didn't ask. This is about the southerner guy, very friendly guy, he's like, of course it wasn't brown rice. So we find all the time, the threshold, we check, we don't allow beyond a certain point, but any natural item, you're gonna find bugs in it. We're like, oh, thank you very much. What are your statistics? They told us statistics that blew us out of the water. Like, what? I said, yeah, sure. Like, do you recommend people checking brown rice? Like, yeah, sure, we're gonna put it in our package, check this in from bugs before you eat it. Everyone's gonna buy it, right? Like, we're not doing that. But they were not surprised at all. And we were the ones that were shocked by how forthcoming they were with information. Like, this is something that's an accepted, understood thing in the rice, the brown rice industry. It wasn't part of the brown rice. We're like, okay, now we're a little problem on our hands. So we work with them to try to figure out what the best recommended way to check brown rice is. And the reality is that you might say on our website, and it only says it in northeastern United States, which is our region, just because we haven't checked in other places. The reality is that this company is selling brown rice everywhere, and it's really a problem everywhere. And I can tell you, not a week goes by that I don't get text messages from Mashkitim. I can tell you, somebody's on PM me, but I get a message from Mashkitim. We're finding bugs in this brown rice, this brown rice, this brown rice. It's quite common and more common than you want to think. Now, if you find a bug in your brown rice, depends how many you find. You'll find 1 or 2 bugs in your brown rice. Try checking it again. And if there's no more, then there's no more. Sometimes you're going to have an infestation, and when you see it, you'll know it. Because bugs in brown rice are not small bugs, and they're not hidden bugs. They're quite visible. Also checking brown rice. Now, I don't know what's going on inside this bag. I'm kind of a little bit worried to know about it. This is actually from the original batch that the company sent us that had an infestation. So let's see what we got. So the way to check brown rice is they take a strainer, and I have some different size strainers. This is a strainer, I got this in Target. Comes in a package free. You can get this in Amazon. It's what? Yeah, for a minute. Yeah, turn on for a minute. And they can't see what I'm doing otherwise?
Oh, no, they can. I was just going to focus in a little.
Oh, yeah, whatever. That's fine. Yeah, you focus for a minute or two. This. Good. Yeah. You take this strainer over here. You're just going to take the brown rice. Now, there's 2 ways to do this, by the way. The SAR didn't laugh at us because they say they check their brown rice by Pesach, and they always find bugs. They find dirt. They find all kinds. So they check their white rice, check their brown rice by Pesach. SAR didn't check rice. They always take it kernel by kernel 3 times. By the way, that's their minute. 3 times by Pesach. That's how they do it. They were kind of laughing when they developed this procedure. They're like, yeah, what's the big deal with check rice? You tell them to check rice? No problem. And they say even when they check it for Pesach, they find things all the time in it. So that's why they always check it. They don't find weeds, by the way. They don't find weeds. Okay? They find dirt, they find other kinds of things in there, but not weeds. I ask them that question all the time. So, oh yeah, you don't know what you're eating. It's like, well, it's not hummus, I don't care. Anyway, okay, so the best way is taking a strainer like this and take it over. I have it over a light box. It does not have to be a light box. It could be a white piece of paper. This is not anything that's particularly hard to see. We have a video on our website also about this. Take it for about 25-30 seconds like that. Now, you don't want to use, by the way, you want to use a regular standard strainer. You don't want to use a sifter or something that's really tight mesh because then nothing will get through it. The regular standard strainer, a macaroni strainer like this, the rice is probably will go right through it. You want to get something that's a little bit in the middle, like any kind of metal mesh strainer like this. You say number 12 mesh, which, by the way, what that means is that if you count 12 holes in an inch, that's called number 12 mesh. Just about the size of the hole. But anyway, it doesn't usually sit on the package anyway. But this is pretty standard to use the brown rice strainer. And then you see over here, if you find any bugs. No bugs here. This is the top of the package. At the bottom of the package, I'm actually pretty curious to see if there's anything that's there. You could do it on a light box, you don't have to. But it's not, pretty simple thing to do. If you don't find any bugs, you're good to go. I'm going to dump out the rest of the package because I'm very curious to see what's at the bottom of it. Doesn't look too bad. don't see anything obvious. But as I was saying before, anyways, you could do this Friday, which is put on a plate or something like that, and just go one by one like that. That 100% works if you're willing to do that. But this is a little bit easier. Anything that comes out from the bottom of this package. No, not bad. Okay. Anyone wants to take it home? Take it home. I'm not taking it back with me. So I don't like brown rice.
So the concern on the brown rice meadow, the buds are all smaller than the grains of rice. That's what you're saying.
They are, but not much smaller than grains of rice. They're very easy to see. Very easy to see.
So it's very possible you might even just pour it in the strainer and look at it at the top, and there they are.
100%. Very, very fine.
And what, just to clarify, white rice does not have a.
White rice does not seem to have this problem.
Good.
I'm not saying you'll never find the problem in white rice, but it's generally speaking, it's something that's infested. The company tells us to because it's very processed and they clean it, and they don't generally have these kinds of problems. We did have in 7 Mile had a shipment of macaroni that was infested with the same types of bugs. There were country pests, there were beetles and weevils and things like that. And it was interesting. It was which brand was Essential Every Day, which is a super value brand. It was only the ranzini, the elbows and the spaghetti and everything else, other varieties, exact same expiration date. I don't know if it was a different plant or something like that. It was totally clean. The ranzini was totally infested. I mean, like totally infested. Like dozens and dozens of bugs coming out of that box.
So it could be just that one day's production, and that's what they were doing that day.
I don't know what it was, or the distributor held this. I mean, 7 Mile Market had a problem with flour a couple of years ago. It was the week of Rosh Hashanah, and they put a sale on with the Shvacha brand flour. They put the high gluten flour, the bread flour, and the red well purpose. And it turned out it was completely infested. And it was problems. Everybody already made the call for Rosh Hashanah already, right? What was it? Why did they put it on sale? They said they had gotten the company had sold it to them at the beginning of the summer. They said they had overstock, and they sold it to them. They put it in their warehouse in Baltimore. They admittedly forgot about it. And then for Rosh Hashanah, there's tons and tons of flour. Like, we need more flour. Like, oh, right, we have the shipment of flour in the back of the warehouse. They brought it out. It was invested. It was sitting in the back of a hot warehouse the whole summer. They just had forgotten about it. So that was their problem. It wasn't the company's problem. It wasn't a general problem with Shvacha flour. The same lot code being sold in every other city in the country had no problems. It was this particular store's problem. Okay, they recalled it right away. Okay, they did what they had to do, right? But it's really just a storage problem, usually an isolated storage problem. The problem is sometimes it can be a bigger issue. Like in case of brown rice, the company themselves are telling you, yeah, this is a problem. So you got to check it. At the same time, again, it's something that's a minimum. So most of the time they'll be okay. Because again, they don't want to sell things that have bugs either. But it's something that's very susceptible because it's raw, unprocessed, and has potential to have infestation quite common and more common than you want to think. The other thing is quinoa. Okay, now quinoa is delicious, and quinoa is something that is usable all year round for Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, which is on Pesach too. And but the problem with quinoa is the following thing. Quinoa comes, most of it anyways, comes from South America, Bolivia and Peru. Now, Bolivia and Peru, these are the crops, the main crops of the country. This is what they make their money on. And they're very, very proud of their quinoa. Quinoa is usually a grain that grows very well at high elevation, which is the Andes Mountains over there. 7, 8, 10,000 feet, 12,000, 15,000 feet. They're growing quinoa up there. They also grow barley up there. They leave that out of the equation for right now, based on discussion. But they grow quinoa at very high elevations. Usually it should be clean at that high elevation. You should not be having such problems with it. However, it's hard to work at those elevations. So a lot of farmers got together, decided, at least in, Bolivia is landlocked, but Peru, they're going to start growing near the coast in lower elevation areas where it's closer to sea level, much easier to harvest there, much easier to grow there. The problem is that quality wasn't good. And let's forget about anything else. The quality itself wasn't good. It wasn't what those countries, Peru specifically, is proud of. It wasn't the quality of the Peruvian people. So they didn't want to sell it. The government did not let them sell it. This was about 8 years ago at this point. They did not let them sell it. Right? So it was sitting around doing nothing in warehouses. Okay. After a couple of years, the distributors decided, what are we wasting this quinoa here for? Let's start mixing in with other quinoa. I don't know the difference, but it's all going to taste the same with the higher quality, lower quality mixed together. and voila, send it out to a good friend in the United States. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is something that a distributor, even as early as 2 months ago, told us has become now the standard practice in those countries of how the quinoa associations, whatever it is, how they operate. Lower quality, higher quality, mix it together, send it out. It's totally acceptable to do that. Now, by the way, it sounds like they're trying to cheat you. Every company does that. They have a threshold of what they consider quality, low quality, they mix it together, different things like that. And they play with the quality that way. And I don't say play with the quality, they play with the taste, they play with the variables to put out a product that they want to put out. And they do that with the quinoa now. This has now become standard practice. And that is why quinoa has a major infestation problem, because they have this low quality quinoa that sits around for years and they mix it in slowly with the higher quality quinoa that's coming from the mountains. So this is a problem that we had thought it won't be temporary. Now the companies themselves, no, it's not temporary. We're going to keep doing this because it works very well for us to keep doing this. Like, oh, great, thank you very much. So we know that. Now, at the same time, there's a new industry that's coming growing very rapidly. That is quinoa that's grown in the Rockies, in Colorado and the Canadian Rockies. It doesn't necessarily taste 100% the same, even though I can't tell the difference. It has the saponin on it, a little bit more bitter. A lot of the restaurants and stores don't like it as much, but it's they're getting there. As far as I can tell, those quinoa from the Colorado Rockies and from Canada, that's clean. It has to say they're grown in Colorado or in Canada. You can't really find it so much in the stores, but you can find it on Amazon. It's very easy to find, and if you want to go with that quinoa, it should be pretty good to go. You don't have to bother checking it. But quinoa specifically, we're going to check some quinoa now. Really the same process. They're the exact same process. Really start K brand quinoa. Regardless of the half from the bank, because there's nothing we can do about it. We actually go to the packing plants and we take samples of the quinoa and brown rice, as they're packing it, and they have quality control. So the companies don't want to pack it, they're bugs in it. The problem is they can't check for eggs and other things like that. And they don't necessarily know how old the quinoa was before it got to them. So that's where the problem comes. That shortly thereafter you can have an infestation problem. So if we're either has a start count or any other hatch chart, it's something you really want to check. Now, quinoa is a little bit smaller than brown rice, so you need a little bit of a different size strainer. So it doesn't mean you have to have a whole pantry full of different size strainers to check all the different items. It's really just two. This one is a little bit smaller, OXO strainer. You find this in Target, very, very common, $8.99. It's very easy strainer to use. If you use it for macaroni too, you are allowed to do that. If interesting, halacha, which you can ask for Arizona afterwards, you have to title it if all you're doing it is using it for checking produce as opposed to straining macaroni. Good question. That's goes to the other side of the room. Same process for checking quinoa. And take it, put it in the strainer. Now, what strainer to use again? You want to make something that quinoa is not going to go right through. So if you take even the brown rice strainer, the quinoa is going to go right through. So you take it, this strainer works very well. Take it over the white box, or again, a white piece of paper or something, and then just examine it. And if you don't see any bugs there, you're good to go. Should you check the whole bag? Yes, you should check the whole bag, because a lot of times the bugs will sink to the bottom, or things like that. So you want to check the whole bag here about you. Only shaking the bugs in my teeth. And then I end up with a power problem. Okay, it wasn't. Ouch. This is pretty cool. Yeah. I'll say some bugs in this after that are kind of, they're all pretty much dead. But full disclosure, this bag of quinoa has been sitting around. It predates COVID for sure. Okay, it's been sitting in my office. So yeah, I kind of knew there was bugs in it. That's why I brought it. But anyway, we'll take a look at that more carefully afterwards. But for now, we'll be good on the side. But anyway, that's as far as dried goods goes. And I spent more time in fresh vegetables because it's something that's it's a current issue, it's a more recent issue. It's changed from the last time I was here. And now we're going to go into, I'm not going to go some, we're going to do like literally a few minutes on lettuce. And I want to talk about, first I want to talk about some of the changes that have happened recently also. So let's go back to the PowerPoint.
We'll pull the PowerPoint in a second. There are two questions here. One is for the brown rice and quinoa, you have to check even if it has a half-shell, which I believe you said is correct.
Yeah, I'm checking it has a half-shell. And you can't control storage.
Is there somewhere maybe on the bug checking website about where it tells you which type of strainer?
Yeah, we have on our website the exact size strainers, and we even have links to buy the strainers if you want, from Target and Amazon and things like that, to buy an actual strainer that works for each item. We are not controlled by Amazon or Target, just making sure you understand that. Just there are convenient places to shop, so we will. Okay. Dry items, okay, once we're on that, dates and figs, that's an old story, need to be checked. And before you eat them, carob, for whoever eats those with Tu B'Shvat coming up, it seems that it's a Tu B'Shvat fruit for some reason. I think because, like in Europe and things like that, they only had dry fruit. Tu B'Shvat has nothing to do with dry fruit. Just, I don't know, just kind of the minute it was developed that everyone eats dry fruit. Tu B'Shvat, go buy yourself some fresh mangoes that just came on the plane today from Guatemala and enjoy them. No need to have such dry fruit that's been sitting around for years. Anyway, yeah, so dates and figs, you want to check them properly for bugs, not uncommon. Generally speaking, the dates are fresher. They sell those big measurable dates from Eretz Yisrael. The big ones are very expensive, very high quality, very rare to find a bug in those things. You buy the cheap ones, it's common. I'll tell you what else is common. If you open up the dates, especially the cheap ones, you're going to find piles that look like little balls inside. I tell people, if you open a date, it doesn't look like part of the date, then it's not. Right? What is it? So it could be a bug. In case of these little pile of what looks like little balls, it's actually bug droppings. Okay, you don't want to eat that either, even though hopefully can tell you it's a bug. It's not going to be 6 or 7 lavin, but it's not going to go over too long. The black eyed peas we can talk about Rosh Hashanah time. Don't have to waste time on that now. Okay, checking greens. I'm going to jump for a minute. We spoke with the Prophet last time. I think this is really mentioned selling fruit plus. Everyone seems to know what that is. So we'll review that in a minute. I want to jump to some items that are a little bit new. Let's see where I put them. Everyone's talking about Rabbinical College. Okay, we'll definitely go back there. Brown rice. Blueberries, sugar peas, sugar snap, and snow peas. Okay, here's a new one. So this is something that I developed at the beginning of the summer, where we had a mashgiach who was in Guatemala doing a production of sugar peas and snap peas frozen. And he wasn't working for the Starcade, even though he's a close friend of mine, and he does work for the Starcade. Sometimes this wasn't a Starcade production, but he called me and said, I always check them, just because I want to be careful. And I've been to the fields and I see they're growing right amongst all the other vegetables in the field. And he was finding a lot of thrips, which is a very common vegetable insect. He's like, this is strange. What's going on here? I kept checking and checking, kept finding thrips. So from there it became a large-scale project that all the Kashrus agencies undertook over a period of about a month and a half, approximately. And the Starcade alone checked 55 different samples of snap peas. And it also, with snow peas, because when we sent people to the store, nothing against ladies, so most of them actually when we sent to the store, I met Hayden, were giving the snack pea and snow pea, right? So they ended up mixing them up and buying the wrong one. And the mice, they both have the same problem, okay? And they look very similar. These are snap peas, these are snow peas. One's a little bit flatter, but they're very similar type of item. They're both used in Chinese restaurants, okay? So that's the reality. And what we found was the following thing. If you find triple washed ones, or ones that say washed, that's not here. For example, I bought these in Giant today. They say on them washed and ready to use. We have not found so many bugs on these. These are really washed and ready to use. You can take them, you can enjoy them. You're not saying you'll never find a bug in them. But once in a while, you might find a leech miner on the outside of them. You can see some whatever. But reality is that these really are washed ready to use. No special protocols needed for these. If you go to the store or like the restaurants, they get raw, unwashed ones, buy them loose in the supermarket. Those are completely unwashed, straight from the field. Those weren't finding significant levels of thrips in them. But I have to think carefully, right? So like triple washed ones or washed ones are no problem. Unwashed ones too. What did they do? What did they do to them to get rid of their bug problem? Presumably it started with the same thing. So every company is different, obviously. So we decided, let's cut to the chase. Let's take our protocols that we use for strawberries, for example. One time, soapy water, agitate it, let it soak for a minute, rinse it off. I don't mean rinse it off one by one. agitate in soap and water, rinse it off, not finding anything after that. Right, so then we decided, okay, let's do that, recommend that. And we're still looking into it, but that became the current recommendation right now. So prepare a soapy solution, approximately 2 tablespoons of soap per gallon of water, which is the same thing we recommend for strawberries. Agitate the snap peas in the water or snow peas for 20 or 30 seconds, let them soak for a minute, rinse them off, no further checking required, done. Okay, that's if you buy the unwashed ones. If you buy the washed ones, then you don't do anything with them. If that became now the recommendation, what we do with snap peas and snow peas in the restaurants, and that's what we recommend consumers do as well. Now, IQF, which stands for individual cooked frozen, snap peas, and snow peas. Big question mark. We had information from the OU that a lot of companies that put this frozen actually are not really washing the fruits and vegetables before they freeze them. Whatever, I'm not doing anything right or wrong, just a reality. And our research showed that also that we were finding more in the frozen than we were finding in the. So something wasn't adding up. So apparently they were right. They're not necessarily washing it the same way that they're washing it when they sell them fresh like this. So right now we're unable to recommend frozen. And I see that specifically that way. It's like, I'm not saying there's guaranteed to be a problem, but we have seen a problem. I don't have a good solution. Because you're going to defrost them and try to wash them, it's not going to work. They're going to fall apart. You're not going to put them in your frying pan afterwards and make stir fry. It's not going to work. So right now we recommend people just avoid buying frozen. Buy these the fresh ones that are ready to eat and use whatever you want to use them for. I'll give you a hint. If you want frozen ones, take these, put them in the freezer.
So I have something that really speaks to me. I have some, and I make sure to get the ones from Guatemala because I don't want to get the ones from China. Who knows what's in that? So
They're snappy.
Right, snappy.
No, if they are really a snappy one from China.
Yeah, you don't know what they are. Yeah. So I get them from Giant, and I also get green beans, which your green beans are still good. Okay.
For now.
And the great thing is pop in the microwave right before Shabbos, have a quick green vegetable. It doesn't require any checking or anything.
Right.
So you're telling me the stuff those ones that I have a few bags sitting in my freezer right now.
When you bought, they're already frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend using it.
Could I try the soap and wash thing?
You're not going to end up with anything usable afterwards.
Okay.
Because you have to defrost them completely and then they fall apart. Doesn't work well. You tried it a few times, doesn't work well. It's very typical in the 50s. You know, every store that sells these triple watch already, and they seem to be fine. There is talk that maybe it's not enough. I don't know. Our research is ongoing right now. This is something we're comfortable recommending. So this is what we would tell people to do. Okay, now on that note, let's jump to blending and juicing for a second, and then we're going to work backwards, go back to Shmata, because then at that point, whenever we end on Shmata, it's something everyone really is already familiar with. So I don't feel bad. We're not skipping out any information I think is important for people to know. So blending and juicing is a great invention. It's becoming more and more popular now, especially with the advent of fly bowls and acai bowls and all these different things. Acai, by the way, you can buy any acai you want, does not present any bug issue. You get this question constantly now. Acai is one of the superfoods. I'm going to get into it. But the reality is like this, is that one thing interesting, here's the story. You're buying something, let's say frozen strawberries that are conventional, not organic, right? Conventional frozen strawberries that don't have a texture on them. And you're buying it in order to blend. So you're allowed to do that. Okay, you're allowed to do that. Why are you allowed to do that? There's bugs in it. That's true. Right? But there's not enough bugs that create a problem. And if you want to get technical about it, because your intention is not to blend up the bugs, even though at the end of the day you are. But your intention is to make yourself a nice Kashmata smoothie. Right? So in that situation, halachically it is allowed. Now, will the star K or Rabbi Washington put on a shelf on such a thing? Maybe not. Right? We won't, actually. We won't, because we're going to actually put a symbol on it. It means something that had no questions about it. But halachically speaking, if you want to do it in your own home, it is allowed if you call the star K. I believe Rabbi Washington too. Yes, and my own home, am I allowed to do this? The answer is yes, we're allowed to do this from home. But in our certified places, we're not doing it. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe maybe Rabbi Washington does allow it. I don't know. A lot of agencies actually do allow it in the certified places. Again, hopefully there's nothing wrong with doing it. Again, as long as it's blended up. How well does it have to be blended up? Smoothie. Think about smoothie. Smoothie consistently. Does it have to be absolutely liquefied? Not necessarily. It could be thick, but it has to be something that's a homogeneous mixture, a smooth mixture that it's been pureed. Okay, fair enough. And you can do that pretty much with, I mean, there's not that many items that's so relevant to. The biggest one is frozen strawberries, which statistically speaking, by the way, is either the first or second most popular smoothie in the United States. I don't know what the first one would be. If it's number two, what's number one? Believe it or not, who said? Yeah, actually, yes, banana. I was not surprised. I thought it'd be raspberry or something. So no, banana. Either number one, strawberry, number two. They can flip sometimes, but 1 and 2 is definitely strawberry and banana. Banana does not present any bug issue, by the way. So that's not a concern. Now this is going to be good for strawberries. Now it's not going to be good for raspberries and blackberries. Raspberries and blackberries don't have a good, don't have a good solution for it. 3 items I don't have a good solution for: raspberries, blackberries. That's one item. Brussels sprouts is another item, simply because there are plenty of bugs in Brussels sprouts, like a cabbage. Cabbage you're taking apart and you're rinsing. You pretty much get rid of the bug problem pretty easily, right, as we discussed last time. The Brussels sprouts are leaving them whole, right? So if you want to shave the Brussels sprouts and then check them and rinse them, you can do that. But whole Brussels sprouts is really very little solution. Some of the food companies did start growing them in greenhouses and checking samples and selling them frozen. That obviously would be okay. But otherwise, fresh Brussels sprouts, I don't have a good solution for. And artichoke, and the reason is because in between the layers of these leaves, there are an incredible amount of bugs. Really incredible amount of bugs. If you want to take them apart and then check them, you can do that. But again, that's not the way most people want to use their artichokes unless you're really a diehard and really want your artichokes very, very badly. But I have a better solution for you, and that is you can buy canned artichoke bottoms, which is really just the core of the artichoke, does not have the leaves on it. They are available with many different artichokes from many different companies, totally bug-free, no problem, nothing to be concerned about. Okay, that's as far as that goes. Now, blueberries, we probably did not discuss blueberries last time, so let's discuss blueberries now. Okay, the issue with blueberries is, by the way, just backing up for a second, here's a picture of brown bugs on brown rice. This is brown rice kernels and the bugs on them. So they're not that small, not that much smaller than the kernels of the rice. So pretty easy to see. Kid was a little bit smaller, but you could end up with the same type of issues on there. That's what it looks like on a light box. You see, it's not that small. Okay, back to blueberries. The issue with blueberries are 2 things. Number one is that there could be thrips and mites on the outside of the blueberry, but that usually will rinse off pretty well because there's not really much place for them to hide. The other issue on blueberries are going to be scale insects. Scale insects is a fascinating bug, where the bug basically implants itself on the outside of the blueberry. It happens on citrus fruits too, sometimes, and it grows, secretes this waxy substance that covers itself over, and it's literally stuck in the outside of the blueberry or the orange or something like that. Now, in an orange, you can see it pretty clearly. Here's my orange. Here. I had to struggle to find this, by the way, because you take an orange, if it looks clean, it's clean. You find over here like these black spots on them, those are scale bugs. So first of all, if you find this orange in the store, you're not going to buy it anyway. It doesn't look nice, and the ones next to it look much nicer, so why are you going to buy it? Second of all, you rub your hand on it, they don't come off. They really don't come off. And it's really make people crazy. You wash your hand if you kill an orange. It happens to be, if you go to the juice orchards where they grow oranges for juices, the oranges don't look like this. They're green, they're ugly, they're full of scales, and they take them and they make delicious juice. Right? So that's why there was that whole question years ago about bugs and oranges. Not getting into that now. It's more, don't worry about it. We're not going to discuss that detail now. But it really comes up as far as, let's say in the orange, you want to make zest. Right? You want to use the outside of the orange peel. So if you find an orange like this, you're not going to buy it anyway. I wouldn't worry about it. If it looks clean, it's clean. In our restaurants, we make much people just eyeball the oranges to make sure they're clean before they're making orange chicken or things like that. Where they use the actual orange peel, you can take a peel and just make it off, and it will come off that way. But they're not going to come off otherwise so easily. So if you're eating an orange, even if you're eating this orange, you're peeling it and eating it, you really don't have to worry about it. However, in blueberries, there's a bigger issue with blueberries because you can't see them as easily. Well, they are pretty visible. I'll show you some pictures in a second. And they're a little bit more common in blueberries than they are in oranges. At the same time, I can tell you because I go every week to Pliables in Baltimore, which is, Pliables is fruit smoothie, acai bowl type of place. And I check the blueberries there. They wash them, strawberries, they wash blueberries, and I check them for scales. This year has been pretty good on the scales. I've not found too many of them. But again, I'll show you some pictures of what they look like. The recommendation would be for blueberries is a simple thing is that you say wash them in the same manner as strawberries. That gets rid of all the crooks and the mites and everything like that. A little secret there, which we don't publish because it'll make everybody crazy. If you only wash your blueberries once instead of twice, it's okay anyway. That's number one. And the only reason we threw into the same category of blueberries is just because we had the protocols already in place for strawberries. Everybody was familiar with it already. We don't want to make another category, wash twice, wash once, make everybody crazy. We said, no, blueberries and strawberries, put them in the same category. You also don't have to rinse them individually like you do strawberries. So you take the whole thing and rinse them off, get the soap off, and you're good to go. That gets rid of, again, because it's a very smooth berry, that will effectively get rid of all the trips and mites that are on the blueberries. But before you do that, you want to just take a handful of blueberries out of the container and look for any scale bugs when I be there. There are pictures on the thing. They're really not that hard to see. You can take a look at the orange if you want to see them outright very clearly. They look like a shiny, waxy substance. Usually they have concentric circles with a planet satin a little bit. You can tell a scale when you see it. It's really not that hard to do. And again, if you're not seeing them, don't be surprised. They're not always there. So, take a look. If you don't see any, rinse them off, enjoy, and I wouldn't think twice or more than 3 times after that. That's as far as blueberries goes. These are some pictures, covering up some pictures of what the scales look like. And you can see, they do stand out. They could be white, they could be brown. They're not blue, they're not dark, not the same color as the blueberries. They stand out. They're pretty easy to see. Okay. That's all the new information. Now, just as a review, and we're kind of going to end there. We're going to go back to protocol method for a second. Just to review that because that's pretty much the basis and the mainstay of the forensic checking industry, pretty much used for all the other things that we talked about. So let's back up to there for a second.
So on the blueberries, then basically what you're looking for is really anything that doesn't look like a blueberry.
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of them will have foamates and things like that on them that will just be like brown indentations. They're never going to be in. They're always going to be sticking out. So if it's sticking in, it's just an malformation of blueberry. I wouldn't worry about that too much. But right now I'm really not finding too many of them. So if you're checking out and you're looking for them, it's not going to be. Don't be so surprised. This is the through puff method video. Doesn't work. Okay, we'll just do through puff up here. As an information, so just to remind and refresh everybody of what it looks like, how it works, and this can be used also to show what the bugs look like. Now, the soap, as you remember, we recommend using the 7th generation soap that's used in a dishwasher, which is an electric dishwasher, not the regular dish soap you wash your dishes with. And the reason is very simple: the dish soap at your sink causes bubbles, so you try agitating the vegetables, and then you end up with piles of bubbles all over the place. It's a mess. It distorts everything. The soap that you use in your electric dishwasher doesn't cause any bubbles, so it keeps everything clear and free. This soap is actually natural, non-toxic, kosher. Well, you said being kosher for Pesach, so it's something that's very commonly available. You get it on Amazon, get it in Target, get it everywhere. I actually gave this talk one time to a group of high school girls, and they were like, "It's non-toxic." I said, "Yeah." They, "Can we taste it?" You cook? I mean, listen. I had health inspectors walk into the restaurant and said, "What are you using?" I said, "This." They said, "You can't use it." Why not? He said, "Because it's soap." I said, "It's natural and toxic. Go ahead, eat it." They go, "Thanks." I mean, it's like no different than using lemon juice or anything like that. It's totally 100% edible. The company says 100% edible. And then they agreed to that. So anyways, but these girls tasted it and they said, "It's not bad." He said, "You can take it for snack." I'm like, I don't know about that. But anyways, I said, "Which one do you like better, the lemon or the lavender?" So some was like lemon, some was like lavender, some was like unflavored. It's not coffee, give it a little bit of creamer. Okay, whatever. Hey guys, good night. But anyways, but yes, it is really natural, non-toxic, and it really is edible. So, those of you who want to stick to organic and not worry about counting benefits, is definitely something to use. Okay, so this is the head of lettuce. Believe it or not. To me. So we take the lettuce, agitate it. Now we're going to pretend we rinsed this already. And the reason for that is because if you take lettuce, the shell, put in the water, you're going to get a lot of dirt, which is not something you want, and it's hard to see the bugs through the dirt. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to pretend we washed it already and agitate it in the lettuce. Agitate it in the water. Shake it off. And then you're going to pour this through the pot. The easiest way to do this is if you have 2 strainers and sandwiches, but any way you do it works. long as you can hold it properly, so put water through it. Take the water, pour it through. Then you're going to check this on the light box, which I set up here. Just put it over the quinoa for a second. You check this on the light box and see if there's any bugs there. Now, if you don't, the most essential piece of equipment here, you can see pretty clearly everything that's on the lettuce is going to go up over here. It's a little hard to see with all that quinoa underneath it, but yeah, there are some bugs here. The most essential piece of equipment that you need here, or supply that you need here, is this piece of cloth, this strip cloth. If you don't have a light box, if you have a white surface and you're like a good flashlight, that works also. When I travel, I don't carry a light box with me. The companies have, but I carry a flashlight with me, and I just put on a white towel or something like that. And then I check it out with good overhead lighting. That works also. If you don't have a loop, anything like that. Also, again, these bugs are all really visible to the naked eye. You don't really need a loop to see them. It's helpful. It's easier. It gives you more confidence. It's something we recommend and something we want all our mashgichim to have, because, as I tell people, you can build a deck with a handsaw and a hammer and nails. But if you have the right tools, the job goes quick, out of efficient, and you're going to do it right. The deck might end up a little bit, off-centered and crooked if you try doing it that way. But if you have power tools, you have a level, and you have the right tools, the job goes fast, efficient, and you do the job well. So that's why we want all mashgichim to have light boxes, tooth cloths, strainers, loops, because if you're doing the job professionally, you want to do the job right. But again, the most essential thing you need over here is really just this. Okay. Any questions before I'm going to set up the tooth cloths, also that everyone can come see the different things and different types of bugs. Yeah.
There's something we got on the video, we're talking about nutrient bugs, 20%. I don't understand it. 10% overhead.
By servings. What are the chances of finding a bug in a particular serving of lettuce? If it's higher than 10%, it's going to be an MLC. A serve by serving, yeah. Yeah, because Chazal are worried that you should not eat a bug. So how much lettuce do you eat at a time? A serving. How much is a serving? Not the exact amount, but the approximate amount. It's not showing where we go with serving when we're making that generalization. Yeah.
If I'm buying white thing, with the start pay extra on it, and I'm eating it within the time period instead of before the expiration date is over, do I have a problem?
The expiration date is not set based on potential infestation, based on how long it's going to take before they feel that the taste is not going to taste as good and start getting hard, or things like that. It could have sat around for a couple of years already because the shelf life on dry food is pretty long. And not only that, it could have sat around before it was even packed for a long time.
So I can just put it in the refrigerator.
Again, but the question is, when you got it, was it really in at that point in time? That I don't know. Now we do send mashgichim to the plants where they pack these things, and they check them there, and they generally are clean when they pack them. But again, that's not something that's always in our control. And the problem is like this: is that let's say they send it out. Pigs are packed, let's say in Turkey. Common thing, they're packed in Turkey, right? They pack them today. Tomorrow they send them out to a distribution warehouse where it's going to sit by the port. It's pretty hot there right now in humid conditions for a month. Not so long, right? But that's a long time to be sitting in proper storage conditions. Then it gets on the boat and ends up in your store. It's only 2 months after the packing date by the time it ends up in the store, but I don't know where it was the last 2 months. Right. So we actually started now with a lot of companies. PowerPoint. Beginning, we started putting the start date symbol, which says in the Kashrus symbol itself, check for insects which we're using. We started putting that on a lot of our dried food items. And people should be aware that something should be checked. Now, it's a little bit of balance, but the companies aren't sort of thrilled about that. But at the same time, we're hoping that everyone's going to follow suit, because everyone's in the same problem. Like, why should we put action on something that's kind of ready to eat, but it's not really ready to eat, because we're still saying you have to check it. So we're still saying, like, we would never do it with lettuce, but we never put a starter K or a vinyl Washington symbol on lettuce that's something to be checked, right? And Rabbi always joked about that. He said, "Well, I'm going to sell you a chicken. It's kosher under the starter K as long as you check it and salt it properly." What am I selling you, right? What did I do for you? Nothing, right? So over here, the case of dried food is really the only industry we have this kind of anomaly where at the time of packing it's kosher. We did our best that we can do. Problem is that it's very hard to control storage. So We can cancel the whole industry and say we're not certifying them anymore. It's hard to justify that because again, most of the time it's not going to be invested. Right, so we should cancel the whole industry, not because we're losing money, that's not the equation. Just because, first of all, nothing is as simple as it seems anymore. So right now, dry food is fairly simple. How many times Trader Joe's, by the way, sells two types of dry mango. The one that has one ingredient, mango, and the one that has mango, glycerin, citric acid, no hechsher, not kosher. It's trade. They look the same. Right? So the dry food industry is not free of Kashrus concerns. It's not an industry we want to ignore either. So it is important for us to be involved in the dry food industry and to give our jobs to the dry food industry. At the same time, we have to kind of advise consumers that there is a risk, inherent risk in dry food of storage, in which case we recommend for certain types of dry food, figs and dates, check before eating it. It's kind of the most balanced approach we can take, because you're kind of stuck in this kind of quagmire over here of what to do. So this is what, behind the decided this, and we weighed this very carefully, and pretty much all agencies came to the same conclusion on their own, is that we're going to give ourselves some dry food, at the same time recommend that they should be checked before eating because it's kind of not much of a choice. Okay. That's, I think, the fairest thing I can say. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I just was basically wondering, did you put the brick off of the column or below?
In between. I held it in place with two columns. Right?
I can see what we're kind of saying.
Hold on. I'm gonna set up another one anyway.
You put it on top, okay.
I put it in between like this, just for practical reasons, just to hold it in place. Just for that reason, just to be able to hold it in place so it doesn't go flying, doesn't move over the place.
But really then, if you only have one colander, so the thrift cloth in the colander, and just make sure it doesn't fly
Also,
out.
it's helpful because it takes out the large pieces on top. You can also just take like paper clips or something like that and hold it over your sink like that, any way you hold it still when you're pouring it through is helpful. This is just something that's very, most people have at least one strainer in their house.
Right.
Maybe not two, most people have at least one, so it's something that's helpful to
You can also, you can hold it.
you hold that way, right? That's all. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is now is I'm gonna set up, I kind of messed this trip up, I apologize. I missed both.
There was something else you were going to show on here or no, on the PowerPoint, or you mentioned something?
No, I spoke it out, it's fine. We do it. These are, by the way, the Starkey light boxes. They are available for sale. This week, Mrs. Friedman about it. If you want, I did bring a bunch of them on my card, if anybody's interested. Again, I'm not here to sell you that you have to have this. It's a lot easier to. But the main thing you're looking at is the flip flop. We don't have it right from last time, but she asked me to remove them. Now we make them in the fancy boxes. So, okay, so I'm gonna set up a few flip flops over here that everyone can see what the bugs look like. I'm gonna kind of have to review these. Shouldn't put that on there, but okay. All right, we're gonna redo this. I'll set up a few flip flops for lettuces and things like that, and then everyone is feel free to come and take a look. Afterwards, we'll kind of end it over there. We're headed to here, but I'll explain the flip flops. Any questions, feel free to come up. Otherwise, thank you everybody for coming, and much hatzlacha in checking. And feel free to be in touch with questions or anything anytime. You can email the Star K, you can email me. Everyone at the Star K is the same email address, Rabbi, whatever your last name is, at star-k.org. So my last name is Tendler, so you can do it that way. And if you have any other questions, you can also ask Mrs. Price. I called you out, Mrs. Price.
By NJ last week in New York, New Jersey.
And there, yeah. There are bugs in produce, believe it or not. That's
It's a Daniel school.
everybody thinks we're making this up. Okay.
Well, something there.
This one is quite full of bugs. Everyone come take a look at that if you would like. The light boxes we're gonna sell them for a special. Yeah, on Amazon there's 70. I totally messed this up. I messed this up.
Okay, we have a question where locally thrift cloths are sold for somebody who didn't actually come here this evening.
So Mrs. Freeman's gonna hold on to a bunch of them. And if, otherwise, they are available at the Star K office, or on Amazon. Only risk with doing that.
Oh, yeah. Switch to these.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because the issue is that they haven't found a problem. They provided they like a fresh, not the frozen, my problem. We said there was something on your. They're watching ready. Oh, I have to get a giant. Wow. No. Yes. I didn't notice that. Yes, I did. Come right out. Yeah, that's not good.
My mother had.
Rabbi?
How many people were on?
About 30.
Seventh generation. We have this. Well, I heard nobody learned all this stuff. Yeah, so.
What are you?
I did what the
Yeah, I was contacting her. Why? Better not.
That guy right there.
They run out.
There's that, and then there's this one. Well, I think you said. I think this. Somebody. I'm actually maybe. Oh, here he is. I think that's true. This one.
So I would tell you to shave them. Okay, so they slice them.
Yeah.
Right. They sell them like that now. They sell them like, yeah, Trader Joe's, and it sells them, they call them shaved Brussels sprouts. They fill them slice. So these spots over here are like a waxy substance. Really dead waxy. Again, either orange, it doesn't matter. Right. Exactly. Look, they don't come on. They're not coming on. It exists. You're choosing your friend carefully, you're not gonna choose those aren't anyway.
We can
Choose ones that are clean. These black spots over here, wax. underneath those wax spots. If you're eating these on itself, don't wear. You're not. It's a nasty thing if you don't.